Can Washington pull off the upset in Happy Valley?
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back in to another edition of the Locked On Huskies podcast. I'm Roman Tomashoff. That's Lars Hanson. He's site editor with Athlon Sports' Inside the Huskies. I'm the site editor with Huskies Wire. Thank you for making this your first watch or first listen of the day, as we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKDOWNCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lars, we got a really fun show coming at all the everydayers today. We're going to get into some recruiting, some of the things we saw and heard on the sideline at Washington's win over USC. I got a chance to talk to the mother of a five-star safety in the 2026 class, Bralan Womack. I got to talk to his mom, Nicole. She gave me some really great insight and also gave me some hints on when they might be coming back. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about that this Penn State offense is going to provide a really big challenge for this Washington defense. But the big question, Lars, according to our good friends over at FanDuel, Washington is a 14-point underdog heading into the whiteout at Penn State. But it feels like the spread might want to be a little bit closer than that. Penn State's got a lot of injuries, and Washington, they played a really good game. Jedd Fisch on Monday called it the best game they've played this season in all three phases. Can Washington pull this off?
I mean, the thing for me, they'll cover the spread. I don't think that would be a surprise. So I guess, can they pull off that upset? Sure. Can you pull off the full upset, the full board, actually win on the scoreboard upset? I mean, again, the pieces are all there to have a competitive game. And I think, going on the road, you're probably knocking the points down a little bit. It's probably over-under, I think it's 44.5, 45, maybe something.
Yeah, it's pretty low.
Where USC Washington was 55, and that over didn't even hit like I thought it would. So I would say certainly bet the under. So in that regard, I can see how UW pulls it off, the defense leaning heavily on that one. But just to me, when you look back at it, I would not be surprised if it's a one-possession game, 5-point game at the end. But I still don't, for all intent, I can't project an upset. Would I be surprised? Like, could they do it? Sure. Would I bet on it? No.
I think I'm with you there, but for me, it's more of when I look at what this Washington team, and I talked about this with our buddy Zach Seiko of Locked On Nittany Lions on the Tuesday show. So everybody should go make sure they listen to that crossover as well. But one of the things we talked about is Washington has the pieces to pull this off. That's the thing. And that's one of the things we've been saying all season. And that's why we're so excited about what the Jedd Fisch era is going to continue to do is these year one mistakes, these self-inflicted wounds that have killed the Huskies time and time again. That's something that in the whiteout, you cannot make those mistakes. You just straight up can't do that. But the other thing that you can think about in moving forward is, all right, you're still 0-4 away from home this season. You have a chance to pull off a victory in the setting that nobody thinks you can do that, especially when you look at some of these numbers. But at the same point, something our buddy Jake Butt told us on Monday as well, where with Will Rogers, with the senior leadership, you have the pieces, you have the experience, you have everything you need to do it. And it's something where I look at, Jonah Coleman, if he can establish himself after a career high 23 carries. I look at this Washington defense where Drew Allar, he could be a little inconsistent at times. If James Franklin and Andy Kotelnicki want him to throw the ball a lot, Washington's defense has the pieces to take advantage. And I don't think I'm going on a limb by saying I think that the USC receiving core is a lot better than the one that Penn State has.
I agree. And again, for that's why I said, for the reason you lean on defensively, I can see them winning it. I just don't know. It's not just Washington's defense versus Penn State's offense. It's Washington's special teams versus Penn State's special teams. It's Washington's offense versus Penn State. And those are the latter two categories where it's not necessarily a shot of the team because, Jedd mentioned today, we're 7 for 7 in the red zone the past 2 weeks. But he said it so deflatingly, and he knows because he followed it up by saying, look, we still left a lot of points on the board. And I think that's the problem. For me, if you take out, let's say, 1 out of every 3 drives, so now you're scoring on – if Washington has 4 scoring drives against Penn State, is that enough? Because that's 4 scoring drives, not 4 touchdown drives. Do you think Washington could actually get multiple touchdowns in this game? And I'm not saying Penn State's all-world defense like Washington and a couple of years ago, from the years ago and that sort of thing, but they have a very good defense. And now, again, you mentioned they have some injured players and things like that. But at the same point, like a Washington, I think, well, if you don't have Max McCree, obviously Khalid Tabay is going to start against Penn State, as Jedd Fisch said on Monday. We all like Khalid Tabay. Big fan.
Yeah.
I think he's going to be great. But in that whiteout, in that condition, when you already look at the procedural penalties Washington's had, they have done a better job at getting rid of, but they're still there. And it's like, well, if this game was at Husky Stadium, I feel much more confident than I would being in Happy Valley, 111,000. Now, it's not going to be a blowout. I would be more. Let's do it this way. I would be more surprised if Washington gets blown out by Penn State than they would upset. Now, I think it's going to be somewhere kind of in the middle. Right? Again, I still think Penn State wins this game, at least as we're talking about this on Monday. But with that being said, it's going to have to come down to those handful of plays. And for the most part, away from Husky Stadium, as you mentioned, they haven't gone the Huskies' way. Now, it's not just officiating or calls like that. I'm saying like things that UW has done where, hey, you kind of need some breaks to go your way. None of them have come on the road.
I certainly agree with you there. And that's one thing where I'm really curious to see what this is going to look like in terms of just the perspective of not necessarily travel, because you're right. We've seen them have to travel multiple time zones a couple of times already, and, not necessarily be up for it right at the beginning, thinking of the Iowa game. But when I think about just the actual normal schedule of this one, normal, in quotes, having to go all the way to the East Coast, but with the Rutgers game, that one being on a Friday night, and then Iowa and Indiana being the 9 a.m. kickoff, I just think, all right, Saturday, 8 p.m. local time there, 5 p.m. for us. But looking at that and saying, maybe, it's going to keep this flow in a rhythm. The practices don't have to be changed up at all. So that's something that I'm curious about in this sense as well.
Man, I wish it was 5 p.m. where I'm going to be on Saturday, because, man, that's going to be rough. But you know what? In a way, it's almost like, because as we're talking about this, which of the two is more likely to be a UW win? This weekend or the end of the season? I actually think this weekend. Now, we both want it to be the end of the season, and I think that game will also be a good game too. But I just think with the way Penn State's offense is, Washington's defense should do a good job shutting them down. The question is, does Washington have enough in the coffers offensively, aside from Jonah, who's a running back, not a receiver? Sure. So you're not talking about, big plays down the field. You're talking about hoping Jonah doesn't take too much of a licking in the first half to where you have him in the fourth quarter to make those ground and pound plays. I just don't know if it's going to fully be there.
So I agree with you where there are a lot of questions that it's one of those things where I do like this team and I do believe in this team. And I think this team has the ability and the coaching staff and everything necessary to get it right. But it's one of those things where with what they've shown on the road and just away from Husky Stadium, factoring in the Lumen Field game as well, it's one of those things where I want to see it. So I certainly agree. And I hear what you're saying. And I think that this team has what it needs to go on the road and find a way to hang in the game early. Where the big question I have in this game is, and we're going to get to more of that in a sec, is what the run defense is going to look like. Because I think as a whole, this defense is built to play really well on the road, but it needs to stop the run. So with Lars, with that being said, let's get into it. Right after a message from our friends over at Hims. Your sex life is important, but your schedule is busy. You don't have the time to go to a doctor's office to get treated for ED. Through Hims, you can get a personalized ED treatment without stepping foot outside your door. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED medication like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits, and no insurance is needed. One low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/lockedon. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Prices vary based on product and subscription plan. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place, so when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And I got to keep going back to the well here. Jaden Daniels for Rookie of the Year. I know Lamar Jackson is the favorite right now for MVP. He's having a spectacular year, but I love Josh Allen in that category. He's been spectacular all season long as well. And if the Bills find a way to win the AFC, the Chiefs drop a few games here and there, Josh Allen for MVP is a real smart pick right now. So, Lars, when I think about this Washington defense, I see a really talented group defending the pass. They're still second in the country. They did a good job hanging in there with USC, forcing 3 turnovers, which is something you love to see. The run defense needs a little work. I know you've got some great stats about Penn State's running backs, but Washington's defense showed in the second half against USC, it's still really susceptible on the ground. And I feel like this Penn State offense, they're more than willing to, like a lot of teams in the Big Ten, are willing to just grind it out, ground and pound, and just figure it out from there, really.
Again, it's why, if you look back to the season, Washington has only had 3 games and 1 in the Big Ten where they haven't allowed a rushing touchdown this season. And you just think about that. You think about the Iowa game. Think about the Indiana game in a way where, better passing probably, but those runs were still hitting. And even against USC, where you look at the third quarter, why did USC take the lead? Woody Mark started hitting. It was 16, 15, 14, 13, and I think 13 on back-to-back drives. 4 plays, 10-plus yards. More like 4 plays, 12-plus. But either way, the point being, Washington's still susceptible. And so to me, like that's where the concern has been, you can make it when it matters, but after a while, the longer your defense is out there on the road, and then you talk about how many goal line stands is Washington going to need to make against Penn State, they probably got 1 or 2 in them, but the problem is there might be 3 or 4 in the game. And that's kind of where the problem comes into play, where, sure, Washington is not going to get run over. The only little team that ran over Washington was Iowa. If we're being real, I think that was the one team. And so is Penn State a cut off the block in that regard? Kind of, but not necessarily, right? Not to the same caliber and level. And so, it's a winnable battle for Washington. But to me, it's like, it's not about the first half. It's about the second half. It's like whether Penn State could, be up or down at a half. And to me, it's like, well, knowing James Franklin, he's going to want to run the ball more so in the second half anyways. And so it's about getting after Drew Allar in the first half and then forcing them to go back to Drew Allar in the second half instead of ground and pound and control the clock. Because if Washington's not leading at halftime and they don't get the ball in front of their quarter, it might be a wrap.
So this is one thing that I'm glad that that's the route you wanted to go with this, because one thing I'm really curious about is what Steve Belichick wants to do to defend tight end Tyler Warren. That kid's unbelievable. Watching him play is so much fun. Watching him that USC game was unreal. And I think Washington has the personnel needed to limit him. And I don't want to say contain him, but find a way to limit him. And I'm just curious to see what that's going to look like, where this is crazy to say it, or I think it's the best possible move in my personal opinion, where I want to see what Kamori House can do, man. We saw him drop into coverage and run with wide receivers. I think this is the kind of guy that he's going to be able to run with and stick with and find a way to just man up and play good defense, because we've seen him do that. And when I look on the outside, I say, all right, we know what these corners can do. We know they can cover. We know they can force bad throws. We know they can take advantage of some of those bad throws. So the question is, you talk about utilizing Drew Allar, and you talk about saying, all right, you got to find a way to make sure that he is a big factor in this game in the second half. And he's really talented. I love his upside. I do. I think he could be a really, really talented player for a long time. But at the same point, he's still somewhat inconsistent. And I think with Washington's pass rush, I think they have the ability to make some things happen. We saw it happen with Miller Moss, and the depth, the talent, the way that Steve Belichick likes to utilize these guys to free them up. Penn State's got a really good offensive line when it comes to pass blocking. But at the same point, I think that this Washington defense has what it takes to make life uncomfortable for Drew Allar. But when he gets outside the pocket, are you going to be able to contain him? Because he can run as well.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm looking at the numbers right now, and he's their third leading rusher. Now, again, behind two, Nicholas Singleton and Katrin Allen. So you kind of see where Washington has Jonah and then Cam and Adam, and they're all three right there, but it's certainly 1A with Jonah. Penn State is like, okay, we kind of have two 1Bs. And that's still a shot at them. That's just, when you look at the stats,
I like Singleton a lot. I will say, sorry, I do like Singleton a lot. I think he's a real fun player, but you're absolutely right. Yeah.
In terms of the breakdown, how the yardage is broken down, it's literally about a split even fact. But the fact that Drew Allar's got over 200 yards and I think 2 or 3 touchdowns, that to me, that's the X factor right there. That's the, okay, when you do contain Drew Allar or when you do force him to step up in the pocket, who is that spy? And that's why I'm glad you mentioned Kamori, because that's the athletic guy as a freshman say, hey, make sure that guy does not get loose. That's your job. Either contain the running backs or make sure the quarterback doesn't get loose. That's Kamori's job to a T. And I mean, Kamori can do way more than that. But I'm saying in terms of like how you could utilize him, you could use him in so many different ways. It's making sure that not just defending the run, but defending the run at all facets.
So I agree with you there, but at the same point, though, if I wouldn't necessarily utilize him in that spy role, especially with Carson Bruner coming off winning Defensive Player of the Week. Shout out to him for that. But on top of that, I just love Kamori's athleticism in the secondary to be able to just help there and turn and go. I remember when talking to a couple people when he came in, he's just the way he moves. Is he going to end up playing safety? No, he's going to play linebacker. That's just the kind of athlete that he is, which is really fun. I'd prefer personally to trust Carson Bruner or Alfonso Tupatala in that role because we've seen them do it. We know what they're able to provide in that sense. And it's something where when I look at this defensive line, what's that personnel package going to look like too? Where, Jedd Fisch, and one thing that I'm curious to see how it's going to work out with this is Russell Davis, where Jedd Fisch talked a lot about him on Monday. He said, yeah, this is a guy who's up to 235 pounds right now. And, the plan was he wasn't healthy for the majority of the season. So it looks like from what Jedd Fisch is talking about, they're going to redshirt him, but he was really, really happy with the way he performed. He talked about the Lance Holtzclaw stop on 4th down. He said, yeah, it looked like Russell Davis really wore down that tackle before Lance Holtzclaw came in there at the end of the game. So it's one of those things where I think this is a guy who could make a major, impact in this rotation, where it's just somebody else who, like everybody else, like we talked about with the USC game, whether it be Jacob Lane, Jaden Wayne, Isaiah Ward, Lance Holtzclaw, whoever else you want to talk about, Voight Tanufi, Deshaun Lynch, whoever you want to throw into that conversation. He's just another guy who can go in there, make an impact. It might not necessarily be the biggest, most notable impact on the stat sheet, but he's found a way to make an impact on the game, which is more important. And moving forward, it's just a really great piece to have in this rotation.
One guy that you hit on, because as you were looking through the numbers and I'm looking at the snap counts against USC, so Russell Davis had 15, Lynch had 12, Wayne had 10, Lane had 7. The weird one is Holtzclaw had 1. That was the one snap.
Yeah, I thought he was out there for more than that, but I guess I'm wrong.
I swear, when I saw that, they haven't corrected, PF hasn't corrected it in 2 days, so shout out to him for that. But either way, it kind of speaks to the one that I really wanted to talk about is Jacob Lane. Because he has the best run defense grade out of all those guys while still being able to rush the passer. And I think from an interior spot, maybe if you go down to 5 linemen or you have him 4 and you put him next to Valdez, and I think that's a little bit of a stretch there. But, like if you have a 5-man front, 3 down linemen plus 2 edges, that would make more sense because you still have the 2 edges with Ward and Durf, and whoever you want to put on the opposite edge of Ward. But there's going to have to be a little more meat in the middle of that defense, I feel. And the other guy in that same vein is Russell Davis. 2 different body types, but 2 younger guys who have shown well, but have kind of seemed to not fall off because they haven't fallen off. But the snap count seems to be getting interesting. And so it's to me this is a weekend where the month of November, you're playing for a bowl game this weekend. All of these bowl games, and by the way, Penn State and Oregon are going to be your 2 best road bowl opponents. In terms of you're not going to face a team in a bowl game better than either of those 2 teams. So playing like this is your bowl game, part 1, and then Oregon is your semifinal. The bowl game is your national championship. I know it's not an actual, but phrase it in that way because you're going to have to empty the coffers this weekend.
So I hear you, but you saying that actually it made me think. My thoughts went off in a different direction here, where outside of the last 2 guys that I mentioned on this list, when we're talking about these edge rushers, and that's Voight Tanufi and Deshaun Lynch, what do all those players have in common?
They're all coming back.
Exactly. Where that's the thing where Jedd Fisch has talked about, hey, 15 extra practices if you can get one more win. That's really important. He's talked about the fact that we're getting all these guys coming back, where, when we talked about all the players that are coming in over the bye week, that's something that Jedd has continued to emphasize. He did it after the game. He was like, yeah, we need to keep this going. We need to bring in more guys to be able to keep this rolling. And I'm going to segue that in just a second too. I know, some people enjoy the segues, but it's one of those things where you want to figure out that rotation now. You want to figure out the early part of that rotation right now. And you want to see what these guys have. So in 2025, I don't think an edge rusher is going to be somebody you're going to go after in the transfer portal, especially with, Zach Durfee probably coming back. Jedd didn't offer an update on his status on Monday, so we'll have more on that throughout the week. But it's one of those things where the more I look at that, the more I say, all right, it goes to another thing we've talked about over the course of the year. We see the vision. We see the plan. And now that Russell Davis is healthy, we can look at that defensive line as a whole and say, especially on the edge, and say, all right, this is the vision. Let's see what that's going to look like. And Lars, the messaging was there, and Jedd Fisch made an impact on some big-time players over the weekend. We'll get there right after a message from our good friends over at ZBiotics. ZBiotics pre-alcohol probiotic drink is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. Just remember to make ZBiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly and you'll feel your best tomorrow. Here's how to use it. Step 1, drink pre-alcohol for best results. Make pre-alcohol your first drink of the night. Step 2, drink responsibly. Pace yourself, hydrate, and get a good night's sleep. Step 3, enjoy tomorrow. Wake up feeling refreshed and ready to take on the day. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use the Locked On College checkout. ZBiotics is backed with 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnCollege and use the code LockedOnCollege at checkout for 15% off. And we've also got a message from our good friends over at Game Time, because Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets, which is great news if you want to go get tickets to senior night on Friday, November 15th, Washington's final football home game of the season, any Washington basketball games, any Seahawks games, Kraken games. There's so many great games coming up that you can get tickets to with Game Time Picks, because curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. With all-in pricing, you can toggle this feature to show the total upfront with no surprise fees to checkout, and with seat views, you can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So Lars, Bralan Womack was I want to say the most critical visitor on campus. Just it might not be the term, but he was the highest profile. This is a kid who's a top 20 recruit in the 247 Sports Composite in the 2026 class. And he was originally supposed to be up here for the Michigan game. Wasn't able to make the trip, rescheduled really quickly, which I think is always a good sign. It's a minor thing where kids have to reschedule for whatever reason. It is what it is, but had to reschedule, did it like almost immediately for Washington's next home game. Came up here, enjoyed it so much that, I reached out to his mother and she told me, yeah, we're going to be coming back on an official visit over the summer. Like, we were blown away. They have a great relationship with Vinny Sunseri. And it's not just what Jedd and Vinny are selling on the NFL front. It's the Foster School of Business. It's everything that Washington provides. So it's really cool to see something that, you and I are still a little skeptical of. And that's recruiting in the South, because it's really hard. We've seen it fail. We have in the 2025 class. Fail might be a harsh word, but if you're not getting those guys, it's not what you want it to be, right? We think Jedd can pull it off. We've seen him go in and, start to make inroads where he's getting Ramon Adams out of Texas. He's getting Caleb Smith out of Alabama. Those guys still are members of this class. But if you can make an impact on a kid like Bralan Womack and say, hey, everything we got going up on here at Washington, which the USC game was a great way to show him with the way those safeties are being utilized, where it's one of those things, when we talked about the recruitment of Darian Clarity, it's, hey, look at the way the safeties are being utilized in this defense. Now imagine that's you. Also want to mention Ryland Dillard-Allen was one of the guys we did see on the sideline who did make a visit for this game. That's a kid who is going to make a tremendous impact in one of those roles moving forward. But I'm just so impressed with everything that not only Bralan Womack has on tape, but with the way that the staff has been able to recruit him.
And that's why year one's so important, where you look back at Kalen DeBoer's staff, where it's like, okay, you're offering a lot of 26s, 27s. That's great. You're doing the inroads early. We need like 25, 24, not 26, 27. Like, it's good. Get those offers out. But if you're talking about 3 or 4 years down the line, these guys that you're bringing in this year and next year are going to be departing in 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's great. Yeah. And that's why I think the build is so important, because yes, obviously, you get around players and the fans and get to see the safeties, but you can do all that at home. No, not a shot at you, but it's like getting these kids in the environment of Husky Stadium where they can go back and go to Texas, go to Alabama, go to Auburn, go to wherever you want to go visit and say, Washington actually kind of comparable to Starkville, or kind of comparable to, I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying, like, get that in these kids' heads. And then ideally, like UW did, get a win in that game so there's no sour taste where, hey, you know what, it was a great visit. Unfortunately, they lost, but, I like what they're doing. It's a lot easier for a kid, much like a coach, to sell you when you're winning. And that's why Jedd Fisch's year one was so important, to where you don't have that 1-11 season. Is 5-7 still theoretically in play? Sure. Don't think it's going to happen, but it's still theoretically in play. So you want to make sure you're trending in the right direction. And just like this is why you get these kids up on unofficials their junior year, so that you can bring them back either for an unofficial in January or February, when you get the kind of off-season moments where a lot of the class really started to get built, because you don't have the game day to deal with. You don't have to deal with, hey, go check out campus, go check out the library, go check out X, Y, and Z, go check out the row. No, now you just get to be around Vinny Beaumont for 48 hours. That's fantastic. And then you come back in the summer for an official. Now you've had 3 visits in less than a year. That can't be undersold.
I completely agree with you. One of the biggest things that I was told, shout out to Vinny Sunseri, by the way, where he said, one of the first things he told Bralan Womack was, hey, I know we didn't make your top 10 list. And I'm quoting him here from per his mother. I know we didn't make your top 10 list. That's all about to change. That's just something where that's what this whole staff has done on the recruiting trail. And I love that. And Lars, it's something you put out there in a tweet. We dropped something for our Locked On Huskies insiders. If you want to check that out, by the way, it's down in the description below. You should go make sure you sign up for that. We're dropping tons of fun recruiting stuff over there whenever we get it. But something you put out there is the first thing that Jedd did was he walked over to a whole bunch of recruits. And Lars, I'll let you take it from there, because you were the one who had the great tweet about it.
Yeah, so to answer some questions, I'm not going to answer them, because I'm not going to say who was directed at, because in fairness, could have been honestly 3 or 4 guys. I'll just be real about it. It could have been 3 or 4 guys. But the message was, hey, come up here. We'll love you forever. The fans will love you forever. The student body, the administration, everybody on down will love you forever. And we've seen that. How many different coaches, from Sark to Peterson to Jimmy to DeBoer, now to Jedd, Danny Schoen still comes back. Trent McDuffie still comes back. Miles Bryant, old Patriots boy, was on the sideline at the USC game, where I asked him, like, hey.
So was Troy Fautanu.
And Troy, exactly. I didn't see Troy during the game. I saw the photo.
Oh yeah, I ran into him.
But it was funny when I asked Miles, as USC was making that drive before Miller threw the incompletion at the end of the game. Like, hey, Miles, you got any eligibility left? Maybe send a corner blitz off the sideline to see what happens, and he got a good kick out of that. But it shows, like, hey, Miles Bryant was a Sark/Jimmy guy. No ties to Caleb, no ties to Jedd. I mean, I guess there's a Belichick tie in there with Jedd. I'm sure you can touch on that. But it speaks to more or less, like, no matter who's here, you're always welcome back. You will always be beloved. Now, preferably don't transfer out, because then that might take a sting away. But again, nobody's going to ever say that to a recruit. Hey, by the way, come to Washington, and then if you transfer, they won't like you. Of course, nobody's going to like you if you transfer. But the messaging of, I'll say this, it was multiple people who said it, but the one that I heard was glaring in terms of, like, they'll love you forever here. It's coming from multiple levels. It's not just the coaches, not players, not parents. It's everything. And so this isn't just, a coach saying, hey, we really need you guys here. We really need you here. It's the also parent of a current player saying, dude, they'll love you forever here. I can't say more than that, because the player will be given away. But, like, it was a significant statement for a guy who wasn't on the team last year. I'll just say that much.
So I love where you're going with all this, because it also, one of the big things with me there is the NFL time. all this, right? Where Jedd's whole thing is selling the NFL, which I think with some people, the messaging might be a little bit different with Washington because it's, hey, all these guys that got drafted, these weren't guys that played under you. So it feels like that might be a big part of it. But just having those guys around, knowing that there will be more Huskies in the NFL after this next draft, but having all those guys coming back, as you said, and still being around the program and saying, hey, yeah, it's something that we've talked about with multiple people around the program. It's more than a coach. It's the system. It's Washington. It's the university. It's everything about the program itself, from whoever it is, from Sark to Peterson to Jimmy to Kalen to Jedd. It's all this. It's still Washington, and it still has one of the highest number of players in the NFL.
What do all those things have in common? Washington is a destination, not a stop. Now, yeah, for some coaches, like, hey, man, maybe it's their stop. But Washington, you're making Washington a destination. It's about the infrastructure. Everything about it. It's because, again, how many coaches, outside of a handful, stay for 10 plus years? Chris Peterson didn't even stay for 10 plus years. And that's not a shot at Pete. That's just, this day and age in coaching, you're not going to have coach where, hey, I remember playing for him over a decade ago here. It's like, that's not, this ain't your father's fathers. This is the way it is. This isn't Don James. But it's maintaining all the infrastructure around it. So that's why Jedd came to Washington. And now Jedd can turn to a recruiter and say, look why I came to Washington. You should come for the same reason. It's all of it. It's not just, hey, I got a nice payday. I got this and that. It's not just the NIL. And it's all important, but it's not one singular reason. It's all of them tied together. It's almost like if you make the W into if you put a dot at each part of it, connects the dots and it comes all the way back around to the W. That's what makes Washington a destination. I mean, there should be a graphic that puts out about that where you can kind of go ding, ding, and each guy like Vita, King, Mike,
right?
And it all connects back to Washington.
Lars, as always, thank you so much for being here. Thank you to all every day for tuning in. We really do appreciate your support. And if you like all the content we have to offer, again, check out the Locked On Huskies Insider Program. It's down in the description below. Get a free 2-week trial. After that, it's $4.99 a month. We're putting so many fun features over there, and it's all directly to your text message inbox, so it's super easy to use, and we love doing it. It's so much fun to have these conversations with all of the Locked On Huskies insiders that we have one-on-one. It's pretty awesome. And make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast, whether that's YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. We're everywhere. We're updating this channel to do content every single day. So make sure you click that like button, click the little bell so you never miss when we post a new video. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, jump right down below in the comment section. And if you're audio only, please leave us 5-star reviews. It does help us out a lot. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you on Thursday.